So do you realize the words that you're telling yourself are keeping you poor, whether you realize it or not? Your mindset has a massive role to play in how much money you can save, how successful you can be in your life, because about 80% is to do with your mindset rather than the money that you're bringing in. So if you keep telling yourself these things like you're bad with money, you'll never be rich, for example, you will start to believe them. So I'm going to go through the 10 most common things that people tell themselves to keep them poor and how you can counteract this in the future. The first phrase that's really common is, I deserve it. Now, we've all had that experience. Let's say you've just got a bonus from work, right? And you've got about 2 grand injected into your bank account, right? Whether you realize it or not, you are saying to yourself, hey, I deserve it if I go on a big ass holiday with this money, or I deserve it if I buy an expensive handbag with this money, right? But you would usually fall into this mindset of, well, I've worked so hard, I've been so stressed, my manager's a bit of an arse, and I deserve to spend this money in any way that I want to. And this can lead you down a path of false hope for yourself, because you just presume you're always going to get injected with these bonuses every year, but that's not always the case. Our jobs are always at risk in a way when you think about it. How many friends and family do you know that have been made redundant at the drop of a hat? However, you keep spending your bonus or spending large amounts of money frivolously because you deserve it. Yes, you have worked hard, I'm not negating that. But if you keep splurging your money on those things, you're never going to be able to save for the future and have assets for yourself and eventually get out of that job that you don't like. Because if you save surprise bits of money or if you save chunks of money like bonuses, you're able to give yourself a chance to retire early in the future and not have to stress so much about money when you're older. So the next time you get a big injection of money, why don't you save the majority of it rather than a small percentage like 10%? Yes, you can still have some fun and yes, you can still go on trips, but as long as you can actually afford it and as long as you're actually saving automatically every month and every time you get a chunk of money. The second thing people tell themselves is, I'll start saving later. This is a fairly common one. People think, hey, I'm too young, I'm in my 20s, I don't have to worry about saving right now. Or even people in their 30s, they're like, well, I don't have a family yet, it's just me, I'll start saving later, it's fine. But what they don't realize is the power of compound interest is on your side when you're younger. So let's say, for example, you put £300 into an S&P 500 index fund until you retire, and let's say you're age 20. This is how much you would have by the time you retire. However, if you delay things and wait until you're 40 and then invest the same amount of £300 until you retire, this is how much money you will have. It's a stark contrast, and the majority of these are due to interest compounding over time. So even if it's a teeny tiny amount like £50 that you can start to save today, it'll really help yourself out in the future and you won't have to stress so much when you're older. The third thing people tend to say is, I'm just bad with money. Now, this sort of mentality tends to come from maybe you're surrounded by family who have been bad with money in the past, and you grew up in a household that maybe they were always late on paying bills, that maybe they were struggling and renting for many years and couldn't get on the property ladder. So you have injected that into yourself, and you now feel that yourself you're going to be bad with money because that's how you grew up. But that doesn't have to be the case. Because you're putting a self-limiting belief there, you're doing yourself a massive disservice, because you can always learn about personal finance. Yes, we're not being taught it in school, and it should be taught in school everywhere, and unfortunately it isn't. But you can watch things like this channel on YouTube, which is absolutely free. And I've had 10 years of finance experience of working in the city in London. So I'm happily sharing this information for free, okay? So people don't really have an excuse. There's also loads of other personal finance YouTubers out there. Like Nate O'Brien is really insightful, Nishka from London, who's a UK-based personal finance YouTuber. But also be careful, because there will also be people on the internet that have no experience of investing and will be telling you to invest in a certain thing. Or they may have no experience of working in finance or no experience of budgeting. So you really have to be careful. Don't be listening to a random 17-year-old on the internet telling you how to live your life. You decide how you live your life, of course. But you can get tips from personal finance YouTubers for absolutely free on how to budget your money, or how to think about money better, or maybe to dissect, what's your psychological belief about money and how you can change that for yourself. There's also loads of resources in terms of books. I love to recommend The Psychology of Money. I've read it multiple times now. There's a link below if you're curious, right? But it basically delves into the differences between being wealthy and being rich and the mindset around that. AKA, do you want to be a millionaire because you want £1 million worth of stuff? Or do you want to be a millionaire so that you can have financial freedom and live the quality of life that you actually want in terms of having your own time and choices for things? It's about mindset a lot of the time with money. So understand how you feel about money, and then you'll be able to springboard from there. The fourth thing people tell themselves about money is that it's only a small amount. So we do this all the time. In fact, I do this all the time as well, and I have to be better with it. I'll put my hands up. But we might go into a shop and see a t-shirt that's on sale for £15 and it used to be £40. So we would just say to ourselves, oh, it's only a small amount, I can afford £15, and buy ourselves another feckin' t-shirt to throw in our massive wardrobe full of stuff already. We tell ourselves, oh, we can afford that, so it's okay. But that's not necessarily why we should be buying things, you know. We should mainly only be buying things out of a need or out of an absolute love and desire for something. You know, if you're just seeing something on sale and feel like it's a good value, but you don't need the item, you shouldn't actually be buying it. And this is where people fall into consumerism and tricks by marketing teams, you know. A sale doesn't mean you're actually saving money. You're still spending that £15 that you never would have spent if you hadn't walked past that shop. This also goes into cosmetics. How many times when we feel crap about ourselves do we go into Boots or Superdrug and just pick up random bits of makeup that are like a tenner here, a tenner there, and soon enough when we get to the till it's like, oh, it's like £60 because we've picked up small little bits. But in our mind we tell ourselves, oh, it's only a small amount, it'll be okay. But actually, we should really delve into what's driving that. Is it an emotional spending spree you're going on because you feel, stressed out at work, or you're pissed off at your boyfriend, or your family are annoying you? Like, what's the underlying reason for spending in that state? Because what you're seeking there is dopamine. You are after a rush of feeling better, and you hope by buying some lipstick for yourself that you will, of course, feel better. And there is a little spike of dopamine that you'll receive, but that doesn't fix the underlying issue. So that's where you should really understand and think, hey, am I that type of person who just buys makeup on a whim and then actually goes into a bit of a spending spree? Why is that? Let me know down below. When was the last time you just went into Boots randomly and just got a load of stuff that you don't actually need, but it made you feel better? The fifth thing that people tell themselves is that everyone has debt. Now this is especially true for our American comrades listening. Hello guys. I know that an awful lot of Americans have debt, and it's quite common to have 5 figures of debt, whether it's credit card, whether it's student loans, whether it's a personal loan from a friend and family, but that doesn't mean that it's right. Just because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't mean you should too. Do you really want to be creeping into credit card debt and having to worry about how to pay that off for many years to come? And this is a mentality I always lead with, is like, if you can't afford to buy something twice, you shouldn't buy it at all. So don't put that Bali trip on your credit card if you can't afford it in the first place, and it's going to be sitting there for months and months, maybe years, okay? Of course, go to Bali. Bali is amazing, okay? I was lucky enough to go there once. So what I did is I broke that down and I saved a chunk of money every month. So when that time rolled around, I was fully able to fully afford a £2,000 trip. And it didn't cause me stress on the holiday because I wasn't constantly thinking about the debt, You're just putting yourself in a further hole. So really try and steer clear of credit card debt. If you are continuously buying stuff in terms of needs on your credit card, that's a different story. If you can't afford your rent, if you can't afford groceries, you are more than likely living above your means. You're living in an area that's too expensive for your salary. So you either need to get a different job or move. It's as simple as that. If you can't afford the life around you, you shouldn't be leaking into credit cards. You need to lower your costs or increase your salary. The 6th point is actually really interesting, and it's that we tell ourselves, I can't afford it, rather than how can I afford it? What this does is changes our mentality around things. So let's say, for example, that Bali trip. You could have said, hey, I don't want to put it on credit card. Hey, I can't afford it. Hey, I'll never go to Bali, right? But what I'm saying is to flip it round. Don't rely on credit cards, but then ask yourself, hey, how can I afford it? If I saved up £100 every month to a certain point, I will have enough money to go to that trip and to go and enjoy my life with my friends, right? It's not about never doing things that you love or want to do. It's really important to have fun in life, We're all out here working and wanting to live our lives and enjoy it. There's no point staying at home and doing feck all with your life, right? It's really important to go out there and live. But what you need to understand is, how can you afford to do something? And if you can't afford it right now, it doesn't mean that you can never do that thing. It's just about understanding your timelines and how you can get to that point to fully pay it off in cash. The 7th thing that people tell themselves that keep them poor is that money can't buy happiness. Now, this is kind of been instilled in us as we were younger. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that here. But we're almost told that, hey, money is evil and money can't buy happiness. Therefore, we should never strive to, link our happiness with money. And there is an element of truth to that. But also, how many things in life do you need to do that require money? Pretty much everything in life, right? If you want to move to London, you will need money for rent, food, a life there. If you want to relocate to New York City, you will need an awful lot of money for a deposit up front for rental fees there. Of course, happiness shouldn't have to rely on money all the time, but you do need money to get to that point of happiness, I would say. But it's just this simple understanding of, hey, how do we actually feel about money? Do we feel a bit weird when we say to people, I want to be really successful, I want to get a big salary? Like, is that a bad thing in your mind? And why is that? Has someone told you that growing up? Has someone lent into, rich people are snobby and you're like, well, I don't want to be snobby, so I don't want to be rich. It's about understanding your belief around money and how to counteract that and actually, hey, be like, hey, I want to be successful. That requires money. The eighth thing that you may be telling yourself that's keeping you poor is that more income will solve my problems. I recently watched this thing on Graham Stephan where he was talking about how people spend their money in a week. And it had this girl from, I think, Cosmo magazine. It was really random. And she was only on a 15 grand salary in New York, 15, which is absolutely nothing, right? And she said at the end of the interview that her life would be so much easier and all her problems would be solved if she had more money. However, when they broke down what she was spending her money on, she was going crazy with buying things like headphones, cupcakes for £70 for, a birthday party. She was going on holiday to Cancun. She was living way above her means. And even if she had more of a salary, like let's say she had 20 grand or 30 grand or 40 grand, her spending habits wouldn't have changed if she had a higher income. She would have still spent above her means, continue buying frivolous things for people and going out of her way to spend rather than saving anything. So if you don't fix your underlying issues with money, aka your spending habits, budgeting, understanding that you have to live below your means in order to be able to save, then it doesn't matter how much money you have because you will always be broke there. The ninth thing that people tell themselves that keep them poor is that investing is too risky or that it's like gambling. I was definitely told this growing up by family members who just weren't that aware of investing, and that's okay. But that mentality stuck with me for a lot of years because I was such a cautious person, a shy, introverted child and teenager, kind of anyway. And I never got into investing because I was like, well, it's too risky. I've been told it's too risky, However, when I was in my 30s, aka literally 30 years of age on the dot, I discovered this YouTube channel all about John Bogle and interviews that he's done on investing. Now, if you're not aware, John Bogle was the founder of Vanguard, and he was talking about the power of compound interest, and it absolutely blew my mind. And I immediately went into investing whole and started to learn all about this and what an index fund is and how I can grow my wealth. And understanding that compound growth, when it's on your side, you can amass a massive amount of wealth by being consistent with your investing. So I would say if you're new to investing, let me know down below. Do you want me to do another video on beginner investment tips and how you guys can get into it? Because I learned an awful lot in the last few years. So if you guys are new, let me know down below and I'll happily do another video if you want to know more. The 10th thing that people tell themselves that are keeping them poor is that I'll never be rich. And this is, of course, you're putting a ceiling in place there for yourself. So if you grew up in a family that wasn't very well off, or maybe you're surrounded in a community where it's predominantly low income, that's not your fault of where you have been born into and how you have grown up, okay? That's totally out of your control in a way as a child. However, as an adult, you can of course change your mindset. You can of course educate yourself on free platforms like this on YouTube. Or you can go to things like Open University in the UK, which has a lot of courses, reduced rate, or that you can study at home if you've got kids, for example. Or maybe you can try and find a mentor at work, someone that you really admire, and say, hey, can I just sit with you for an hour every month and pick your brain on what made you successful? There are lots of ways that don't require money for you to be more successful in life. If you don't have the money to educate yourself in university and you don't want to get into more debt, you can have, courses online from different personal finance creators that you could do that are a lot cheaper. So our mindset, of course, is the main thing that's going to grow our wealth and grow our success in the future. So it doesn't matter where you are right now, but it does matter what you tell yourself and how you feel about money. Because if you're constantly saying things that you can't do this, I can't do that, you will never even try to do those things. Of course, you need to get out of your head as well. If you're constantly wishing you're successful and wishing you did X, Y, and Z as a career, instead of actually actioning it, you'll never do it. it will just always be a fantasy in your head. So go out there, write down on a notebook right now, what are the 3 things that you want to achieve this year and how can you do them? Make them actionable. If you want more money mindset videos, I'll pop this one here, which I think will really help you on your journey. Thanks, guys. If you want to subscribe, that'll really help me out. I'm a pretty newish channel still, and that would be great to support the channel so I can continue doing more videos like this. All right. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye.